All right, good morning, everyone. So for those of you who are at home, this is the video that you'll be watching today. It'll be fairly short. It'll just be some quick questions. I apologize for the short notice on this, but the more I think about it, with our very limited class time, I think this at this point is probably the best way to keep you guys up to speed. It lets you do this at your own pace, as well as allows you still to get all of the same information that we're getting in class, but while you're still at home. So today, what we're going to talk about, the very introduction, the first part of our AP curriculum, are different types of variables. So in stats, we focus on two different types of variables, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But more importantly, the first thing we have to think about is what is a variable? As in, what is the definition? So a variable is just a characteristic that changes from one individual to another. That's all it is. Any characteristic that changes between individuals. So you can think about eye color is an example of a variable, right? So our examples here, eye color, height, right? Some other things, right? So eye color, obviously, and height are measured in two different ways, right? One is a color, one is an actual height measurement. Some other things, right? Even address, right? Where you live. I think I spelled that correctly, right? So where you live is a variable, right? We don't all live, in the same house, on the same street, in the same part of town. So that is the very basic AP definition of what is a variable, right? It's something that changes. Now notice the key here is not changes with you, but changes from one individual to another. So a variable, right, between or within a single person is different than a variable definition here from College Board and for the context of our class, right? Because your heart rate is a variable, right? In gym class, your heart rate probably goes up. When you're in study hall, your heart rate probably goes down a little bit. However, here, our definition is not changes within one person. It's changes between different people. So I hope that makes sense. Obviously, if you have questions, please let me know. So that is where we start, right? And then we move on to the different types of variables, right? And in our class, we focus on two big types, right? So under this big umbrella of what is a variable, we have numeric, which is also referred to as quantitative, and we have categorical, which is also referred to as qualitative. Now, over on this side, you see this ordinal and nominal. We do not need to worry about that as far as the AP curriculum goes. We do not go any further than just qualitative, right? On the numeric side, we do need to understand the difference between continuous and discrete. But obviously, based on our names here, we can kind of tell here all of this stuff, right? This is our numbers. Things that we can measure using numbers. Your height is a quantitative variable, right? Your shoe size is a quantitative variable. It is a number, right? Qualitative, all of this stuff, right, is stuff that would put you in categories. Or, in reality, just things that you can't measure with a number. So a good example that I used on purpose is eye color, right? Blue, green, brown, whatever it may be, right? Another example may be the city where you were born. That's a qualitative variable. If you were born in New Haven, if you were born in Bridgeport, if you were born in Waterbury, right? There's no numbers associated with that. It's a place, it's a category. So those are the two big things that we focus on in our class, the two different types of data. Now, I'm sure you've heard the words continuous and discrete before, especially when talking about domain and range or different types of functions. And here they mean the same basic thing, right? So continuous just means we can take on a range of values, right? Whereas discrete, right, would be taking specific jumps. Now here, oftentimes in our class, discrete shows up when we talk about counts, right? How many people fall into a certain category, right? While it may be a quantitative variable because we're measuring with numbers, it is a discrete variable because you can't have 1.5 people in a category, right? However, something like height is a better example of a continuous variable because there is no, you're either 6 foot or 6'1", right? You can be 6 foot and 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch and 3/8 of an inch, right? There is no discrete jump. There's not people who are just 6 foot and then 6'2", right? You can fall in any range of data there. So again, I hope that makes sense. If you have questions, please let me know. Right, so now what I want you to do is pause this video right here. Right, on our AP classroom, I assigned to you 3 multiple choice questions. It's probably under the name of Unit 1, Topic 1 questions. There's 3 multiple choice. They should take you about 3 minutes maximum to answer them. It's going to take you longer to read the question than to actually find the solution. So I want you to go do those, and then I want you to come back and watch the rest of this. Okay, if you have questions on any of those, because it should tell you whether or not you got the right answer. If you're confused by something, please leave me a comment on Google Classroom, send me an email, something. We can talk about it tomorrow during my office hours, which will be at the end of the day. So, moving forward, now, there are 2 important ways that we represent categorical variables, right? And so oftentimes we use tables to represent them. And there's really only one important thing that I want you guys to know when you're looking at categorical variables in tables, right? There's a difference between seeing the frequency and seeing what we call relative frequency. So, just the frequency, if I just want to know the frequency of something, that is just a count in whatever category we're in. So, for example, let's say I'm going to create a small table here, right? Let's say I've got height here and the count over here. I'm going to create exactly 2 categories, right? 5 foot, 5 and under, and over 5 foot 5. So let's say I have 6 people here and 7 people here. This is an example of a frequency table because all I'm looking at are the counts. What is the number of people that fall into each category? Relative frequency, on the other hand, is a proportion. We're looking at the proportion of the total in each category. So if I was going to modify my table up here to include the relative frequency, right? I'll do this in a different color. This would be 6 out of 13. This would be 7 out of 13, right? And whatever these end up being as proportions, I'm not exactly sure. We're going to make up some numbers. Let's say this is about 0.46. This is about 0.54, right? So those are 2, while it may seem very simple, it's really, really important to be able to distinguish between those 2 things. AP will ask you very specific questions about frequency versus relative frequency. If you're talking about this table in a free response question, you need to make sure you reference correctly whether it's a frequency table or a relative frequency table. When I talked the other day about them being very specific about the language you have to use, this is a kind of example that I was talking about, right? So just as another example here about frequency versus relative frequency, again, right? You can see here, this is just a count, right? There are 10 people that weigh 50 kilos here, 50 kilograms, right? However, relative frequency, right? 20% of the overall people, right, were in this weight class. And then 12 people in the next one versus 24%. So it's really, really important here to understand the difference between a frequency table and a relative frequency table. And as far as categorical variables go in tables, that is the biggest concept to understand as far as the AP exam goes. So at this point, I'm not going to ask you to do anything in regards to a frequency or a relative frequency table. That's something we'll talk more about when I see you guys tomorrow for your remote learning day. All right, so again, if you have any questions, please send me an email, leave me a quick comment on Google Classroom, and we'll set up a time that we can talk about it. All right, thanks guys, and have a great rest of your day.